I think it's not a secret that Android is far behind iPhones in terms of security. You've probably heard that intelligence agencies from many countries have repeatedly complained that iOS devices are practically impossible to hack, and even demanded that Apple create a special backdoor to gain access to users' encrypted data. It's nice to see that all of this ended with nothing, and they were firmly rejected with their absurd demands. But today that's not what this video is about. I mean, it is, but not about iPhones. They're actually doing well. I recently found out about a newly discovered vulnerability that allowed tracking users and secretly reading their browser history. And the most interesting thing is that this vulnerability was actively exploited by Meta and Yandex. Yandex since February 2017 and Meta since September 2024. This vulnerability is based on the fact that, as it turns out, any user applications on Android can freely send messages through localhost sockets. But even more, unlike on iPhones, they don't operate in an isolated sandbox environment, but can also run in the background and stay live services. So Yandex and Meta decided, why not try communicating through localhost sockets with their own scripts on open web pages in the browser? For example, take this simple case. You have the Yandex Maps application installed on your phone, and you visit the Yandex.ru website in your browser. And while both applications are running in the background, they start communicating with each other through sockets and leak all the information that the script on the webpage was able to gather about you. For instance, all the sites from your history where the Yandex Metrica script is loaded. But it gets much worse. Since communication through localhost sockets on Android is not encrypted, this channel can be easily listened by other apps, which can intercept your history and private data in the same way. Everything that Yandex apps and their web scripts exchange between each other. The process with Meta and Facebook is exactly the same. Data was exchanged between Facebook apps and browsers with open sites containing the Meta Pixel script. However, I should make a disclaimer that they removed this code in June and no longer communicate through localhost sockets. No official statements were made. They just quietly shut it down as soon as the first complaints started coming from webmasters who didn't understand why their site was suddenly sending requests to localhost. So what's the impact? Analysts went through 100,000 top websites ranked by popularity and found out that only in USA, 17,000 pages have the Metapixel script running to communicate through localhost. And the vast majority, 78%, do this even without asking for the user's permission, meaning immediately as soon as the page is open. In the case of Yandex Metrica, there were 1300 sites in the top rankings, and 83% of them don't ask for permission. If you take a look at the list, there are very popular sites like Zen.ru, Avito, and Mail.ru. In Europe, numbers are roughly the same, despite the fact that Europe has GDPR, with many strict regulations requiring clear user consent for any profiling, which they all shamelessly ignored. So, what's the solution? First of all, this method exploits flaws in Android security policy that allows any app to freely communicate through localhost sockets without requiring any special user permission. As they write, all existing privacy settings such as sandboxing, permission requests, incognito modes, and cookie clearing do not close this vulnerability at all. They send the results of their research to browser developers, and some patches attempting to fix the issue have already been released, while others are still in development. However, they also know that this problem cannot be fully solved with a patch, as it stems from fundamental flaws in Android security policies. So that's the deal, my friends. Thanks to the researchers for their work, they found a massive hole in Android and showed the world just how vulnerable this operating system is, and how sneaky big vendors are in collecting your personal data for advertising purposes. And that's all for today. Like and subscribe to see more videos like this.